This is section 9.2, multiplying polynomials. We're going to discuss how to multiply polynomials. We're going to begin with multiplying a monomial times a polynomial using the distributive property. So this is somewhat of a review for many of you. If you remember the distributive property, which we did back in chapter 1. This time we're using it with terms that have higher powers than just x or than just y. So 5 times the quantity 3x plus 7x squared. We're going to multiply the 5 times each term inside the parentheses, and we would end up with 15x plus 35x squared. This answer is not in descending order. It does not have the highest power of x first. So we do need to make sure that we rewrite that as 35x squared plus 15x. Now our answer is in the correct order. The next example we'll try is 6x squared times the quantity 7xy plus 8x to the third. Now if you wish, you can always press pause and calculate the answer and then press resume to check your answer against the answer we calculate here. So I'm going to multiply 6x squared, times each of the terms inside the parentheses, and I will end up with 42x to the third y plus 48x to the fifth. This is the highest power of x, this 48x to the fifth, so we need to rewrite this in descending order, and this would be our final answer. For example, I'm going to ask you to try is if I multiply negative 3y times the quantity 4x y squared minus 5x. Please press pause to calculate this answer. Then press resume when you're ready to compare your answer to the answer we've worked out here. I am going to change the subtraction to addition of the opposite, and I am going to ask you to do the same thing in your work and in your homework. That's just to ensure that we have the correct sign in front of each number. Then we're going to multiply the negative 3y times each term inside the parentheses. Then we're going to multiply negative 3y times 4xy squared, which is negative 12xy to the third. And we're going to multiply negative 3y times negative 5x, and we would end up with 15xy. This term, both terms have x to the first power, but then to decide the order in which we would write these, this term has a degree of 4, this term has a degree of 2, so this is already in the correct order, and that would be our final answer. Please try the next problem here. I have 11 minus 5xy squared, plus 2x squared y, and that quantity times the quantity 8x squared y squared. Please press pause to try this problem on your own, then resume when you are ready to see the final answer. I am going to change this to addition of the opposite. I have two choices. I can either leave this term that's by itself, this monomial, and multiply it by each term that's inside the parentheses. Or if I feel uncomfortable with it being here, I can rewrite this problem and have it as 8x squared y squared, that quantity times 11 plus a negative 5x y squared plus 2x squared y. And then I can multiply the 8x squared y times each term inside these parentheses. Once again, I can do this either way. It depends on which way you are most comfortable doing that. And I do want to just digress for a minute. This is the same thing as having 4 times 3 or 3 times 4. Each term inside the parentheses will represent, if we knew the value of x and y, it would represent a single number. So we're just using our properties of mathematics to rewrite the problem. Let's go ahead and distribute. I have 88 x squared y squared plus a negative 40 x to the third y to the fourth plus 16 x to the fourth y to the third. If I look at my x terms, I do need to rearrange my final answer, and I need to have the x to the fourth term first, 16 x to the fourth y to the third plus negative 40 x to the third y to the fourth plus 88 x squared y squared. And then this would be my final answer. The last one in this portion that I would like you to try is 11 x, y, z times the quantity x squared z plus 5x y minus 7x squared z to the third. And the reason I have the line through my z is a lot of times my z's will look like 2's, and I want to make sure that there's no confusion between the z and a 2. Please press pause while you calculate this answer, then resume when you're ready to compare your answer to the answer we work out here. I'm going to change the subtraction to addition of the opposite, and I am going to multiply this term times each term inside the parentheses. I will have here 11 x to the third y z squared plus 11 xy times the 5xy term is 55x squared y squared z plus a negative 77 x to the third y z to the fourth. If I compare my terms here, I have two terms that have an x to the third component. This has x to the third has y to the first, z to the fourth, z to the second. This term has a degree of 8. This term with the 11 as a coefficient has a degree of 6, excuse me. So the first term will be the negative 77 x to the third y z to the fourth because it has a higher degree. Then the second x to the third term would be 11 x to the third z y squared plus 55 x squared y squared z. This has x squared, so that's why that one becomes at the very end of these 3 terms. All right, next we are going to discuss a binomial times a binomial. And as I've written here, the key is to be consistent, to approach the problem the same way each time. So my first example is going to be 5x plus 3 times 4x plus 1. I am going to take this first term in the first binomial. I'm going to take the 5x and multiply it times each term in the second binomial. So I'm going to have 20x squared, 20x squared plus 5x, and then I'm going to multiply the 3 times each term in the second binomial. So I'll have 12x plus 3. Now I have my x squared term first. I'm going to add my 2 like terms together. So I'll have 20x squared plus 17x plus 3. That is my final answer, and it is in descending order. Let's try another one. 7x minus 3 times the quantity 8x minus, oops, not sure, minus 4. I am going to change my subtraction to addition of the opposite because I want to be sure that I have the correct sign in front of each number. Then I am going to take the first term in the first binomial and multiply it times each term in the second binomial. 56x plus the 7x times negative 4, which is negative 28x. Then I'm going to take the negative 3 and multiply it times each term in the second binomial. Negative 3 times 8x is 24x. Negative 3 times negative 4 is 12. Whoops, I'm sorry, this should have been 56x squared. Sorry. This is my highest term. I'm going to add my like terms together, and I have 56x squared plus a negative 4x plus 12. It is in descending order, so that is my final answer. Now I'm going to have you try one. If you could multiply the quantity 9x minus 2 times the quantity 9x minus 2. Please press pause to multiply this out, then press resume when you're ready to discuss the answer. I'm going to start by changing the subtraction to addition of the opposite. Then I'm going to take the 9x in the first binomial and multiply it by each term in the second binomial. So 9x times 9x is 81x squared, and 9x times negative 2 is negative 18x. Then I'm going to multiply the negative 2 times each term in the binomial. Negative 2 times 9x is negative 18x, and negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. My highest term is first, so I'm going to look. I can add together my like terms. So 81x squared plus negative 36x plus 4 is my final answer. Let's look at a fourth example here. If I have the quantity 3x squared minus 10 times the quantity 3x squared plus 10. Please press pause while you calculate the answer, then resume when you're ready to discuss the answer. I'm going to begin by changing the subtraction to addition of the opposite. Then I'm going to take the first term in the first binomial and multiply it by each term in the second binomial. 3x squared times 3x squared is 9x to the fourth, and 3x squared times 10 is 30x squared. Then I'm going to multiply the negative 10 times each term in the second binomial, and I have negative 30x squared plus negative 10 times 10 is a negative 100. I have my highest power of x is already listed first, so I'm going to look and see if there are any like terms to add together, which there are. 30x squared plus negative 30x squared. That's 0. So my final answer will be 9x to the fourth plus a negative 100. And that would be my final answer. I'm sorry, I am going to go back. One thing I neglected to say is that I am going to leave the negative terms, addition of the opposite, in each of my answers up above. So I'm going to go back to number 3. and put parentheses around the negative 18x and the negative 18x. I'm going to do the same thing for number 2, and I'm going to look at number 1, and I think I'm okay there. I am going to keep, oh, I'm sorry, go back to number 3 and do that there also. I am going to keep the signs in this way, because later on when we are adding and subtracting, we're working with more complicated polynomials and additional operations. I want to be sure that I have the correct sign in front of each number. So I am going to ask you to write things in terms of addition rather than having it at the least number of signs and writing it in terms of subtraction. Let's try number 5. And we have the quantity 6x minus 5y times the quantity 7x minus 9y. Please press pause while you calculate your answer, then resume when you're ready to discuss your answer. I'm going to begin by changing this to addition of the opposite. So I have the correct sign in front of each number. Now, you may have gotten the habit of knowing which term to multiply or to begin with. You do not need to draw the arrows the way I am. I am just doing this for instructional reasons and to establish a habit in terms of how I'm going to be multiplying each of the terms. I'm going to multiply the 6x in the first binomial times each term in the second binomial. 6x times 7x is 42x squared. And 6x times negative 9y is negative 54xy. Then I am going to multiply the negative 5y times each term in the second parentheses, or in the second binomial. Negative 5y times 7x is negative 35xy, and negative 5y times negative 49, times negative 9y is 45y. I have my highest power of x first. I look and I have like terms, so I can add those together. I have 42x squared plus a negative 89xy plus 45y.